Let's start today with growing questions surrounding foreign interference in Canadian politics after two more party leaders have now read an unredacted top-secret report on the issue. Nearly 2 weeks ago, the National Security and Intelligence Committee of Parliamentarians released a redacted version to the public that contains some bombshell allegations. In the report, the committee said there is, quote, troubling intelligence that some parliamentarians are semi-witting or witting participants in the efforts of foreign states to interfere in our politics. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau first received the report back in March, and this week both NDP Leader Jagmeet Singh and Green Party Leader Elizabeth May were given access to the full document thanks to top-secret security clearance. But they had very different takeaways. Have a listen.
For myself, I can say I have no worries about anyone in the House of Commons. There is no list of MPs who have shown disloyalty to Canada. It's somewhere between, report makes me think of Jean Le Carré, but it's not as bad as Jean Le Carré novel, but it's a bit more worrying than Miss Marple.
What they're doing is unethical. It is, in some cases, against the law, and it is indeed, they are indeed traitors to the country.
Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre, meanwhile, has been facing criticism for refusing to get his security clearance to read the classified report and for being the only party leader to do so. Bloc Québécois leader Yves-François Blanchet initially rejected the offer but has since agreed to receive the briefing. The leader of the NDP, Jagmeet Singh, is with us now. Mr. Singh, pleasure to see you. Thank you very much for making the time.
My pleasure. Thank you.
I remember very clearly prior to you reading that unredacted version, you made it clear if there were any perpetrators of foreign interference in your caucus that they would be kicked out. Can we interpret from your response to this report that there are not conclusively anyone, there is not anyone in your caucus involved in foreign interference?
And what I've said to that is that based on reading the report, that with the information that I have, there's no further action that I need to take with respect to my own party, but that there are certainly additional steps that need to be taken in general to ensure that there's no foreign interference going on in our parliamentarian system.
And I want to ask you about what those steps would look like. But first, I think, what was remarkable after listening to your press conference was just how different, to many Canadians watching, I'm assuming, but to me especially, was just how different your interpretation of that report appeared to be with Ms. Mays, who very specifically said she was relieved and that the thing was overblown. You said you were not relieved and that you wanted further action to come from it. How would you explain that difference interpretation to the best of your ability to Canadians watching right now?
So I'm not going to debate another MP, but I can tell you exactly why my interpretation was what it was. I came into reading that report with the lens of there are some very serious, like you said, bombshell elements that the report put forward. I wanted to know if I read the unredacted version, would it confirm those conclusions or would it in any way change the result of those conclusions? What I read absolutely bolsters the conclusion, and it makes me even more alarmed than before. The conclusions that were drawn by the report are that there were serious examples where parliamentarians engaged in activity that undermined our country, and it was summarized as some of it is illegal, and all of it was unethical.
Are you aware of who those alleged parliamentarians are? And are you bound, because of the rules associated with your top security clearance, not to talk about that?
I can't touch on the names, but there are certainly some names that are provided in the unredacted version. Some names are not also there. And so that's something that I can't get into in terms of details because of national security. And I want to just point on that. The reason why it matters to me is when we talk about national security, it's about protecting the people that are doing this important work and also protecting the tools we have as a country. So that's why I can't get into those details.
Maybe I can ask you more broadly, and I ask this to see how it informs the way in which the issue is handled going forward. Are there people currently now that you are worried about acting in the interest of a foreign actor against our national interests, currently serving alongside you in the Parliament of Canada?
Well, the publicly available report expresses concerns that are not resolved. The public reading of, what is publicly available to me, and if you look at all the different examples of what's going on, that should leave people with a sense that this is unresolved and has to be addressed. And so I maintain that position. This is not something that's resolved. It is something that has to be dealt with, and I take it with the utmost seriousness.
I ask you that, and I know you're bound by certain rules again, and I apologize, but I feel like Canadians are very interested to know, because we were presented with such a different interpretation. And I know you don't want to engage, I'm not asking you to engage in a debate with Elizabeth May, but she basically said we can take a breath of relief. We can be okay with what's happening in Parliament now. And the report did not say that. It sounds to me, and please do correct me if I'm wrong, you agree with the conclusion of the report, not Ms. May.
That's right. That's right. I think that's a really good way to put it. And so I'm saying that their conclusions were really, I would say, incendiary in a lot of ways. People saw that and were very deeply worried. I'm saying that that is exactly how people should feel. That feeling of being disturbed or being alarmed by the revelations in that report were maintained by the unredacted version. And that's not even to say I haven't even heard all of the witness testimony and all the information that went into the writing of the report. But the conclusion that was drawn was something that left people feeling really worried and disturbed. I'm saying that I was even more disturbed having read more of the details of what's in there.
The other conclusion you reached, which you talked about, was saying that your impression now is that the Prime Minister is essentially okay with a level of foreign interference occurring in this country. That's a pretty serious thing to say. At the same time, you have endorsed his government. You're keeping Mr. Trudeau in power as Prime Minister. Doesn't that make you complicit?
Not at all. And I want to make this point really clear. I'm worried about foreign interference in an election. I don't want to cause an election to address foreign interference. What I want to do is use my power in a minority government to get answers. I can be very clear. When I was critical of Justin Trudeau, I was equally critical of Pierre Poilievre. I can say with great confidence that neither one, if there was a majority government under Justin Trudeau or a majority government under Pierre Poilievre, neither of them would have allowed for a public inquiry. Both of them have shown behavior where they put the interests of their own party ahead of the country. And there are certain incidents that should absolutely call in anyone who cares about our country to put our country first. And that's why I was very critical of Pierre Poilievre for not even wanting to know what's in there when clearly there's allegations of foreign interference directly related to the Conservative leadership races, touching his party directly, and he doesn't want to know. And that Justin Trudeau did know, and the example I gave with was Mr. Dong, which is publicly available, and that's why I can use that example, is that with Mr. Dong, it was clear that he was briefed, given information about foreign interference from intelligence officers and intelligence officials, and accepted a certain level of interference because he didn't say that we're going to remove the candidacy of Mr. Dong. What I want to point out to Canadians as a leader, we vet candidates. If someone has done an egregious tweet or post, they are sometimes vetted out. That means they cannot run.
But this isn't just like a candidate with a bad
foreign
record.
Interference.
This is such a serious allegation. Like, you've spent the past 2 days talking about how seriously you are taking it versus other leaders. But you have to see from the vantage point of Canadians how I get what you're saying. Forcing an election right now, maybe not the best avenue. But your agreement doesn't have to remain as a formality. Just because you break out of that agreement and stop your clear endorsement of the government doesn't mean that you have to cause an election. You can still vote with them on certain matters of confidence. But you appear unwilling to do anything to change that agreement, even when you accuse the Prime Minister, whom you're keeping in power, of being okay with a level of foreign interference in our own country's political system.
Well, I think that's factual. The facts bear out the fact that he's accepting a certain level of foreign interference. When we vet candidates out as leaders based on an egregious post on social media, we should be able to vet out candidates when there is serious allegations of foreign interference. But I want to be clear, we have used our power. We have been very critical of this government and forced them to do things they would not have otherwise done. I made the point that a majority Conservative government under Pierre Poilievre or a majority Liberal government under Justin Trudeau, neither of them would have moved ahead with public inquiry because we can see in their actions their unwillingness to take this seriously. But we forced a public inquiry to happen.
But they're doing nothing right now. Both of them are doing nothing right now. The government is doing nothing on foreign agents.
Let me be very clear. We are the first ones to call for a public inquiry. The government said no. And then they said maybe we'll do a special rapporteur. They had the special rapporteur. We had the special rapporteur step down as a result of our opposition motion. We forced the government to move forward on a public inquiry. And then not only did we force the public inquiry, we forced the public inquiry to include India after clear information and intelligence related to India's involvement of the killing of a Canadian on Canadian soil. We have used our power in a minority government to purposely push for more transparency and clarity, which would have not been there if we had a majority Liberal or Conservative government.
But here we are,
and so
back
we're
at a
showing
point where
in
those
action,
foreign agents are still there, allegedly, right? We're at a point when where all they're doing is saying this can go to the inquiry. We don't even know if the inquiry is going to expand its mandate to include it, or whether they can include anything different than NSICOP. Like, what are you going to push them to do about this?
So the next steps are, we are saying, based on the report, one is that it raises concerns about members of parliament. We voted in favor of a motion that's going to have the public inquiry look at that. Secondly, we've said that the allegations touching on the Conservative leadership race, we've written a letter to include that in the public inquiry. We're using our tools in parliament to get answers. We're using our tools in parliament to force action.
Do you think
that's
that
what our
inquiry
job
will
is? That's what
provide
my
those
job
answers?
is.
Pardon me, do you think
Oh,
that inquiry
absolutely.
will
It's gonna
provide those answers? What powers do they have above NSICOP?
Well, they're going to provide disclosure to the public. The whole point of a public inquiry, and why we push for it from the beginning, is we're concerned about the erosion of democracy. And so we're using the tools that we have to provide more transparency.
I got to leave it there, Mr. Singh. I appreciate your time as always. Thank you so much.